Okay, this is episode 3 of my brand new podcast, Gut Spiller. It's called that because the idea is that in these interviews, we go a bit deeper than the standard music interview, maybe even spill your guts if we can go that far. So, my name is Joe, and I'm with John. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, my name is John Davis, and I play guitar and sing in Conan and Ungraven.
You've also got a new project, Scene Gen, which we'll get to later in this episode, hopefully.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I should also have added that, but I'm also the founder of a software platform called Scene Gen, which is a network and management platform for the live entertainment industry.
Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that, but you and me, I think we got to know each other probably on the Doom doc more than anything, didn't we? Because we'd come up and film you at Skyhammer and talk to you and Chris. And then we've also been on tour to Japan together. We've also played one show when it was like a drone band, wasn't it?
It was great. I've still got the recording that we did at Skyhammer.
Have you?
Yeah, I'll share that with you if maybe you've lost the file or something.
Did we put that out or anything, or?
No, we didn't put that out now. So I mean, we could. It's let's talk about that off camera, I guess. But it's there. I don't think it's been mastered or anything. But and I don't know whether Chris still has the files. He probably does. But that could be a release. I mean, it's standard, like super slow, heavy drums, and then a bit of phaser over the guitar, and then super slow again. But it's still something we could.
I remember, sitting there. It was that droney that we had to count, didn't we? Do you remember we had to
It was the slowest I've ever played and recorded since I was in a band called Horn. Before, sort of like when Conan was on ice for a while. I packed it in sort of early 2008 because I had a job in Salford, and the driving was a nightmare. And I fancied myself as a bit of a business guy, and I had like a Mazda MX-5 convertible, and I was driving 3 hours to Salford and back, and it was a nightmare. And I was playing golf a lot and all that kind of jazz. And I wasn't really into playing music at that point after we'd done like a couple of demos at Conan. I decided to knock it all on the head. And then toward the end of 2008, when the recession was looming, me and John McNulty, of course now of Colt's Blood, and he's also in another band called Zangief, a Liverpool band, sludge band. They're playing soon, I think. We started this like super slow, then we called it Horn, and it was.
I remember, yeah. I remember you telling me about this.
And we did a few songs. None of them really came to much, but we had one track called Beheaded, which of course Conan did a cover of and released as a split with Bong Ripper.
Right.
So anyway, that's where that came from. I don't know how I got onto that, but.
And then John ended up in he ended up on Horseback Battlehammer, didn't he?
Yeah, Horseback Battlehammer did a few shows with us, and then quite rightly wanted to do his own thing and went and started Colt's Blood, and away he goes. And they're doing really well. They're really, really good.
There was that time, I think, when I was getting into Doom and Sludge, at least in the UK, and there was Conan, there was Colt's Blood, there was Iron Witch, and it felt like all the big bands were from Liverpool.
Scousers.
Well, on the show, I'm trying to start off kind of each episode with a bang, talking about like your favourite story from touring. So, have you got something that might make a good opener?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's going to revolve around the subject of piss. So, we were on tour, me and Chris and a drummer who I won't name. We were playing in Rotterdam, and we had to get up. We only had about we went to a hostel at like 2 a.m. We were drunk and we'd smoked some weed and stuff. Sorry, Mum. But then we went and went to sleep in our hostel, and then I remember I was woken up at whatever time, like an hour into our bedtime, by like what felt like something on my face, and it was our drummer, the lad. He was pissing all over my face. And it was going in my ear, and it was all obviously like literally covered from head to toe in his piss. And I remember sort of just letting him do it for a while. Didn't like jump up as one would expect because I wasn't sober. I was tired and stoned and whatnot. So I just kind of let him do it. I mean, it probably felt really nice. But then when I sat up in bed and I was like, and then sort of shouted or whatever, and he went away, went back to bed, and so I just went in the toilet and sort of dried myself off and didn't get a shower because we didn't think we had time. Should totally have had a shower. Anyway, went back to bed again, went in the bunk above him, and he tried it with Chris not so long after that, and Chris fought him off. But anyway, we played Milton Keynes the next day, so when we played in Milton Keynes, and I was sweating a little bit, and all I could taste was his piss all over me, so must have smelled terrible. And I didn't get a shower until I got home later that day, so Christ knows why I did that. No idea why I dealt with that in the way that I did, but
I mean, like, he did it to you, and it's kind of like, could he just not see? But then he specifically went and tried to piss on someone else.
Yeah.
That's the bit like that, like he had to. Like, he couldn't go unless he was pissing on someone's face.
Yeah, on a person. It couldn't just be in, like, something that he mistook for a toilet. It had to be on a person. It's like, what the hell? So, yeah, so that was a crazy one. I did an interview once with a person in Colchester, and it was back when our label bothered arranging press for us, and we went and when this interviewer said, "Oh yeah, do you wanna?" Sorry, I'm here to interview John Davis, and I was like, "Oh yeah, come on then, let's go and sit in the van." So we went out and sat in the van. We sat in the front seat of the van. The back was a bit messy. So I sat in the front seat. He sat sort of in the two passenger seats next to me with his dictaphone. And we were just kind of sitting there, and he was getting all his paperwork and looking at his papers, and I'm thinking, he must be getting his questions ready. And then he turned around to me and said, "So when's John getting here? When will he be here?" And I was like, "No, I'm John." And it was like, oh, and it was like so embarrassing. Again, that's not outrageous or crazy, but that's just another little.
So who did he think you were?
Funny thing.
No, he did. I mean, not that he should know who I am, but
Yeah, but who did he think you were?
oh, no idea.
Like the driver or something?
That I the interview arranger, our like press manager or something, like at some gig in Colchester to 40 people or whatever it was.
You didn't always have long hair though, did you? You looked a bit more like a standard person, I guess. But
I looked more like a HR manager back then, which is exactly what it was. So I had to sort of morph into this middle-aged man with crazy hair that's grey and a little bit now and a beard. So it's taken me a while to distance myself from HR manager John Davis.
How apart from the way that you look, has kind of metal affected your life? Because it's always funny, the distinction between the life we live, the music we make on the road, and then going back to an ordinary life. It couldn't be more contrasted, really, could it? Like,
There was a period when I felt there was a little bit of a clash. Like, there was a period when I came home from tour, I honestly felt a bit like out of place, just doing the school runs or doing homework with the kids or going shopping or making dinner. I honestly let it go to my head a little bit for a while there. I don't mind saying that. But as I've grown a little bit older, I just kind of embrace both sides. I was sat at the kids' play area before with Edie, and I'm sat there with an Autopsy t-shirt on when it's very mumsy in there, and everyone's just kind of like very like there was no other people that you would be able to earmark as someone who was into metal there at all. I got recognised in the playground by a couple of people who happened to like music and knew my face. Like, literally a minute before we took this call, I was measuring a kitchen cupboard because we've got to put a dishwasher in, so it's just like it all just kind of blends into one now. And I think that a lot of that's to do with because Sarah is also of like a musical mind.
Your wife.
I don't feel as though I have to kind of slip back into this other kind of role when I'm home. I can just be myself. And to be fair, maybe I didn't feel like that before in other relationships, which is nobody's fault at all. That was just a situational thing. So yeah, I'd say, just to come back to the question again, I'd say probably don't really feel the difference too much nowadays.
That's good. You assimilated the two sides of your personality. What would you say is your high point from music so far?
I think the high points are, for me, like getting recognition and being offered to play cool festivals. So like Roeburn Festival, for example. We were desperate to play Roeburn around like 2011, 12, and like a lot of people, I was like sending like Walter these like indirect sort of sideways glances on Facebook, hoping that he would notice us and make us an offer, and eventually, very luckily, after we released Monos, Walter wrote to me and offered us a slot at Roeburn. And I always remember it because I was on the way back from an employment tribunal. It was in my time when I was working in HR. And so I was on the way back from an employment tribunal, and I got this email from Walter saying, "Can you give us a call?" And I couldn't ring him I couldn't ring him fast enough. So it was just great to be able to do that. And then, of course, moving on from there, being asked to play things like Hellfest, for example, and other big festivals, like being invited over to the US for the first time. These are all high points. I'd say probably though, like the main high point probably would have been in those very early days being asked to play Roeburn, because as time has gone on, the significance of that interaction is really obvious. We were one of, a large number of cool bands who could have been made an offer that year, and Walter chose us, and Voivod selected us apparently as one of their little package, which is great because I've been listening to Voivod a lot recently after visiting my friend Nate Carson in Portland, and he got me onto Phobos, and then I've just been like, oh my god, why have I not been listening to these so much up to now? So yeah, that I'd say that if I was going to pick one, that would be like one actual high point, but there have been lots since then.
What about low points, apart from getting pissed on? Although it sounded like you enjoyed that a bit, so
I think I probably did.
Some people pay for that.
Yeah, it definitely. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't. I definitely wasn't aroused in any way. I think it was probably because it was warm, and it felt like a bit like I was in a shower, and I guess I was.
You did actually get a shower that day.
I did, yeah, but not the right, a golden one, though, not a clear one. I think we got told to fuck off once by the management of who's that band who smell a lot and they use like pig's blood when they play live.
Watain,
that was it. Yeah, we played a festival in Poland, and we were just trying to like leave the car park, and they were walking to their stage, or they were just walking off stage, and they were all covered in whatever, pig's blood or whatever. And the management went crazy because we were sort of in the way or something. That was a bit of a bummer because that like shattered the illusion a little bit.
We played Brutal Assault this summer just gone, and they were one of the headliners. And have you ever seen them? Did you watch their show?
No, not my thing.
It was insane, and it actually affected me because we were on the side of the stage. We could see behind the stage. There was like a screen behind the stage that none of the crowd, I don't think the crowd out the front could see. When the guy came off, it was obviously a very intense performance, and obviously the satanic and all that, and after he'd come off, all the band stayed on stage and he knelt down in front of, it must have been some kind of picture of something, and he just like said a prayer for like 2 minutes. And then just walked off, and it was really like spiritual. It was.
Oh yeah, no doubt about it. It is a bit. It is. They do mean it. I've heard anecdotes from other bands who've toured with them, for example, who've witnessed it. In the dressing room, and I've spoken with promoters personally who've had an absolute nightmare with them. Ruining the dressing room and the venues with the smell. So I'd say it's always a low point when band members have moved on. That's like, I couldn't pinpoint one exact example of that. But I mean, like when Phil left, for example, that was a very sad time because we'd literally just been announced for Hellfest. And I know that, Phil didn't feel like he could continue with us at that point for personal reasons. And that was actually a really sad time because I felt sad for him. Because I know how enthusiastic he was about being in the band and how much he enjoyed playing live, and I know that for certain reasons that stopped being something he wanted to do. So I'd say that's probably an identifiable low point. You know, having my friend who I did and do care about a lot, going through something personal which was so bad that it made him stop doing something that I knew he really enjoyed. Yeah. So, and if he'd have stayed, you know, we could have continued to provide a distraction or an escape or whatever for him, and you know, might have been something that in the long run might have been really good to do. So I'm sad for that, but I'm sad I wasn't able to sort of help more in that situation. I'd say that was probably a low point.
Yeah, because obviously you've been the only member, haven't you, throughout Conan? You are Conan.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I am the founding member. Yeah. I mean, we've had members who've stayed a while. Obviously, Chris stayed a little while. I think aside from myself, he's the longest serving member of Conan. Johnny's been with us now since 2017, and so he's got the crown at the moment for the second longest serving member. Right. I think that happens though when you're in a band that doesn't earn enough for everyone to make a full-time salary out of it. Obviously, everyone has to earn money someplace else, and therefore you have to make it fit in around whatever it is that you've got going on in your main job. Fortunately, I don't have to live that way, so therefore I'm like, let's go on tour, let's record, let's play these festivals, and sometimes that can put pressure on other people that they may not want. So I think what you see in the long term at bands is that it's often like the people who move on, if it isn't because they've had a falling out, it's normally because they're not able to commit to what it is the other guys want to do. So we've had a mixture of reasons for our turnovers in the past, but I'd say that we've always come out with, I've always managed the situation quite well, I think, whenever people have moved on. And I think that's an important part of being in a band, and just to kind of treat it as though, like, life goes on. And, it was when Chris told me privately that he wished to move on, I kind of half expected it. And, because I knew at the point that Chris is in his life and was in his life when he made that decision, it's when I was in that spot, it was touch and go whether I would have done the same. So I wasn't surprised that he chose the path that he's chosen. And, Chris knows that I love him very much, and we're still, best of mates. So it's cool. So it's great that we're still working together on Ungrave and stuff and Conan stuff. So we're not really. So yeah, having band members leave I don't really have a problem with it, honestly. And if anything, it freshens things up a little bit, because you get a slightly different sound on the next recording.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just for a bit of context there, Chris has recently announced that he's kind of stepping away from live duties, at least, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he's still working with us in a production capacity, like always. But he, like, early on in the year, he said that our UK tour in March would be his last shows, and indeed they were. So yeah, he's I was talking to Chris and Sarah this morning about some merch stuff. So we are still very much in touch with one another. But yeah, it's Dave Riley now of Fudge Tunnel and Island Apes is now playing bass, which is super cool, because I've been a fan of Fudge Tunnel forever and friends with Dave for a few years now, so it's perfect.
Yeah, no, I mean I've been there with George, because you remember George, right?
Yeah.
He was with us from the start, essentially, and then he left because he wasn't enjoying life in the UK. He's from Romania, and like you say, there's like a period where you're like, that's shit, but then there's a period where someone else comes in and they make you sound like a different band. It's like a tweak. Yeah, and you can start to explore other things. There's certain things you can't do any longer, but there's new things that you can.
Yeah, it opens up new possibilities. Like Chris had like this kind of vocal style which added itself to our sound, but Dave can't quite do the vocals quite like that. So it's like, okay, well that's an interesting challenge for us now to try and navigate around that. But my vocal style has evolved over the years, so I think I can sort of pick up the slack in that respect with some help from Dave. Or we might just get Chris to stand in and just do some guest vocals on a couple of songs, because he didn't do vocals on every song, so we'll see. But I might have to buy him a couple of beers if he does that. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, speaking about kind of continuity, what is your most important ideal? Is there something you've always tried to hold in your heart when you're making music? And
in terms of making music, I always look within myself rather than listening to other bands when I'm writing music. Like, the worst thing I can possibly do is to put Spotify on and listen to bands who play music a bit like ours, because before you know it, I'm playing riffs that sound a little bit like what someone else is doing. So I just kind of stir the pot inside my own mind and just like kind of go within myself and work on musical ideas and riffs and sort of compositions, if you want to make it sound posh, that are of my own making. You know, I truth be known, I don't listen to a lot of bands who occupy our space. You know, I don't like put on doom metal in the van or the car, hardly ever. It always feels nicer for me to listen to synthwave. Like, after our last US tour with Rob from Thra was our driver, I now like got some really cool country and western on my iTunes, and some really good hip hop that Rob has introduced me to, and I was listening to it full blast on my way home from dropping Edie off before, and they're dropping the N-word like throughout the whole thing, and I've got the window down, and I'm like, an ideal for me is just to not trying to be absolutely stubborn about trying not to sound like anybody else. I think we'd probably be accused of sounding a bit like High on Fire here and there.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the one band, especially with your more recent stuff.
Yeah, especially the track Invinciblade off the 10-inch we just released. That song, when we recorded that and when we were writing that, we were like, oh, this sounds a bit like High on Fire. So we can't put it on the album. So we kind of left it to one side. And then we thought, you know what? It'll be cool and it'll be interesting as a one-off release. So that's where the idea for the 10-inch come from. Unashamed, big fan of High on Fire, and have been since probably 2005-06 when I first listened to them. I think that the song 10,000 Years or Baghdad was on a Kerrang compilation CD, and I was like, oh my god, this is like heavy metal but played at the wrong speed. I just thought it was absolutely insane, and I fell in love with it. You know, it's just really, really good. And come to meet them and sort of be, you know, I'm not going to pretend we're friends or anything, but exchange the odd message here and there with the guys. And
played shows with them as well.
Yeah, we played shows with them. Yeah, it was lovely. You know, one of the coolest things that happened was I'd not long sold an amplifier to Matt Pike, and it was the same Laney supergroup that Sleep used on the Sciences release, and I think he sold it on now to the Does It Doom guy, I believe. But for a while there, he owned it, and I remember when we played Psycho Las Vegas in, I think, 2017, and we were in like a busy Hard Rock casino in Las Vegas, and I saw Matt Pike sort of like about 6 or 7 people deep into the crowd, and he noticed me, and he went John, so he come over to me and gave me a big hug and started telling me how heavy neurosis were. It was just like, okay, cool. And as like a couple of times in addition to that, I've sort of seen him in the crowd, and we've had a nice little chat, you know, on a nice level, instead of it just being fanboy and idol. It's funny actually. I remember we toured with them, and after the last show, Metal Hammer wanted to do a feature, so we did this big Swish interview at the Underworld in the dressing room, and we did this fucking photo shoot with me and Matt Pike pretending to fight and wrestle. So he's like got me in a headlock and he's like rubbing on my head and stuff, and it never got published, and I was absolutely devastated because I mean I would have loved to have been in a feature on Metal Hammer with Matt Pike. I probably would have retired from Conan there and then. I would have been my peak, and it never got published.
Why? That seems like an obvious thing to just publish it. Like,
it was a brilliant piece. I got no idea. Like I was asking them questions about Black Sabbath, like what Tony Iommi riff would you keep if Tony said you could keep one. I got a brilliant answer for that, and it was just like, fuck, they didn't do it. They didn't publish, and I got no idea why. And since then, I had a word with the guy who set it all up, who now doesn't work for them anymore, and he couldn't really give me a straight answer either. So I'll probably always be annoyed about that.
Other than not being best mates with Metal Hammer anymore, what's your most controversial music-related opinion?
Not every band has to have their own beer. You know, lot of bands release beer now, and and labels release beer, and we are one of them. And we've got one coming up soon, so I'm not like trying to like say I don't like it, but I just like I see that many, and it makes me wonder like why, you know, is it a promotional thing for the label or for the brewery, or I guess. And we've been very lucky. We're working with some really good breweries. And most recently we had a beer made for us by our friends at Cosmic Eye Brewery in Lincoln, Nebraska, and my friend Sam did a Conan beer there. And it just, I guess I feel a little bit sad because of what's happening to that brewery at the moment, and it just makes me feel a little bit melancholy when I think about like bands having beers made for them, when I think probably it's done because the brewery and the beer making sort of industry, if that's the right phrase, is quite it's a very difficult industry to be in. Right. And it just makes me, when I see bands like releasing beer, it just makes me feel for the breweries behind it, because I now know from first hand from a very dear friend of mine that it's a difficult industry to be in. So that's just something, maybe not musical related, but it kind of is. I see it happening that often, and people like releasing their own hot sauces and stuff like that. Yeah, and I don't understand the sort of link. Beer, kind of, yeah, I can understand that.
There's only like a few bands that can get away with, like, I think the novelty is the fact that it's a novelty.
Yeah.
You know, and it's kind of like, yeah, now you're just doing this random thing. Because the first few bands that did it's like, oh, cool, you're doing something crazy and new. And now it's like, oh, you're just making a sauce.
Yeah, it's just a hot sauce. When actually, I'm really happy with Tapatio anyway. So I don't need that. I don't need that Mantar hot sauce or whatever, you know, like that suffocation hot sauce. I just see it happening a lot, and I just think, it is, now that I know that how difficult things are within the brewery industry, I know that, like, I don't know, I just feel a little bit sad that some of that effort was taken away and to make a Conan beer, and I just feel sad now because I know the story behind it. That's just something that sprung to mind.
I don't know if you remember when we did our own cannabis seed, Kura Kush. We partnered with someone that I knew, like a Spanish seed company, and it was great. And I think, you know, that is hopefully still a novel thing to do. There's very few bands that have done that, but yeah, I think they almost relied on us or expected us to keep the orders flowing. Like, we did an initial batch and we sold like a few and they sold out, but then I think maybe crossed wires or something, and they expected us to keep placing the orders like forever as like this permanent merch item. And yeah, it was a bit strange. We were like, no, we've finished now. But so let's talk about Scene Gen, because I know this is a project you're very passionate about. It's something I nearly got involved with for two reasons. One, because I'm a promoter who possibly stands to benefit from this anyway. I'm also a developer, but I was too busy at the time. But yeah, tell us about this thing that you're working on with a team, really, aren't you? Trying to get it ready to launch.
Yeah. started off when I was a young kid practicing in Liverpool, same rehearsal studios as Cathedral and Anathema, and I'd see them loading their vans for going on tour, and I was sitting in the rehearsal room thinking, how do these bands go on the road? And I was in a band that had we'd recorded a demo and I wanted to play some shows, and I remember not being kind of frustrated about not knowing where to go or who to speak to or how to do it, and feeling really disconnected from literally not knowing what goes on outside in the real world. And I remember on the bar there was a booklet, and it was like the industry guide, and just a phone book basically. And I remember looking through it, and I think I used to write letters to these whoever these people were. I don't know if they were still going. I don't know if they were active or whatever. God knows who they were, but it was like a management agency or a talent agency. And I was I did my own letterhead, we were called Release at that point, the hardest working band in Liverpool. This is when I was 18 or something. Obviously nothing came of it, but and it didn't put me off. And since then I've always just been interested in that side of it, connecting people and finding out who the right people are. And fast forward to Conan's early days, we didn't have a booking agent, but we'd arrange shows sort of a DIY. And then when things got a bit more sophisticated, I just all through those layers of sophistication, I've realised that there was no real set system that everyone used. Everyone had a different thing. And I remember when Black Skull Services started, one of the promoters in Denmark.
So that was your
management, this small management agency, yeah. And we almost all of the bands who came to us wanted help with their bookings. That was the main reason they wanted help. So that was sparked an idea that it was something that could be looked at. And I remember asking for some contacts in Europe off a promoter in Copenhagen, and he sent me a spreadsheet, and he said, now this is the underground, these are all the promoters, don't give this to anyone else. And I'm like, okay. And I thought, well, isn't it a shame that all of these promoters who could be known by everybody are actually on the spreadsheet that's passed around like some secret almanac? And I just thought, isn't it a shame that, why can't this be common knowledge? Why can't all the people that Conan deal with be made visible to all the bands that, a band who are just starting out but are a bit like Conan? Because they'd be really good contacts with that band. And it just kind of bugged me enough that I started thinking that'd be cool to develop a software platform where you can log in, set up a profile, a bit like MySpace, but then your contacts would only be the promoters and the venues that you deal with and the other bands that you deal with. And I got working on one with a couple of different developers. Nothing really came of it, really. And then Morten Leahoy, friend of mine from Copenhagen in 2020-21, sort of got chatting to him. I mean, I was chatting to him anyway, and then I realised he was a really senior back-end web developer, software developer, and he wanted to take a look at what had been done thus far. And he went, oh yeah, this is a great idea, let's do it. So a couple of days later, he committed to doing it formally. And then since then, we've just been building this software platform, and essentially it builds on what they tried to do in America with Book Your Own Fucking Life, which is like a Rolodex of contacts, but searchable by city. It's just like a hand-printed DIY magazine. You can find it down the back of a seat in a van, or in some DIY venue, or a dive bar or whatever, record store. And you'll be able to just search through city by city and see what cool record stores are there, which promoters are in that city, which promoters will put on a show, which venues, and which promoters work at those venues. But this was all done in paper form. They tried to digitize that, but it didn't happen. And so I thought, well, it'd be cool to digitize it, and just to make it so that when Conan add a promoter onto the system, a band who are a bit like Conan but don't have that contact will be alerted, and they can add that person to their network. And if that action is repeated enough times, a network will build, and it'll be, it exists anyway, right? But it doesn't exist on our platform yet. But what we want to do is to get people using SceneGen so that they can add their contacts and transact within the platform. So, you know, within SceneGen, you'll be able to create a day sheet, add a diary entry, plan a tour, plan a route, do a budget. I mean, we got like Master Tour and Gigwell and other platforms. There's one there that evades me, but there is another one. System One is another one. So there's like 3 platforms that have no networking facility whatsoever. So you're sort of like logged in at these things, and it's like playing Call of Duty single player. It's nowhere near as much fun as playing it multiplayer. So what we want to do is take this industry of ours, which is all about being connected and dealing with people, add those boring bits from Gigwell and Master Tour, and make it like a hub that you can log into. And when you log in, you can see all the messages you've had. You can see the gig offers you've had. You can see you can see how much money you've earned this year. You can see, you know, how much money you've earned in France since 2014. All of those weird little stats that no one, you can't just log. I mean, if you've been diligently creating spreadsheets since then, you can access that data, but most people don't. So I want to, like all of that admin side of being in a band, we want to make possible, whereas most people probably don't have the mind to do it. But a lot of the professional bands they'll know for sure what they're worth. You know, Clutch, for example, know exactly how much they can ask for a show in Germany nowadays, because they've got a track record of knowing how many tickets they sell. Where, you know, a young band who sound a bit like Clutch but have only been going for 1 album and 6 months will not know how much to ask for when they play in Paris, but they can look at their peer group and analyse data. And I mean, that isn't in our MVP, I must say. You know, our MVP is all around adding contacts and talking to them on our chat function and adding shows to a diary. But really what we want to do is just to generate this feeling of connectedness, which we know is missing right now. You know, we see a lot of people complaining about they send messages, or they'll send an email to a promoter, but they don't know if the promoter's got it. Whereas actually on SceneGen, you'll be sending a message direct to the promoter, because they've set up a profile on the system.
Yeah.
So obviously our challenge is attracting those users to the system, no doubt about it. That is a challenge, but we feel like we're building something which is really, really cool, that over time people will feel they don't have any choice because it's that good. That's our aim.
Yeah.
It's kind of a weird weird game within itself, trying to find that one person that can help you out. You know, like when you know as a band you want to hit London, you want to hit Nottingham, you want to hit Sheffield, there's probably 2 or 3 people in that city that like you or like your genre that can help you out, but it's just finding them, and it really can be difficult. Yeah, it's like you were saying a bit back tonight, you know, when you're first getting started. I remember that feeling when I was in like an old band, when I was in sixth form, and it's like you literally do not know what to do. Like you're that naive and that green that you just don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Like I guess around that time for me, MySpace was coming in, and so you could message people on but other than that, do you just like walk into the venue? You just walk into the pub and say, "Hi, can we play here?" Like that's the level you kind of at when you're a noob to the scene. Where can people keep track or follow? Because you're about to release something fairly soon, aren't you?
Yeah, we're hoping to have users on there in a limited way in June. There's some funding opportunities coming up this year that are in and around June, so we want to have some users on there already. If people want to keep an eye on progress and maybe sign up, then it would be on www.scenegen.io, and then we'll update people when we're about to invite for testing.
Well, yeah, we'll all keep an eye on that because it could be a game changer. It sounds too good to be true, almost.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah, if you'd have asked me 3 years ago, would we be where we are now, I'd be like, well, probably not. But we're actually quite far down the line. We've still got a ways to go. But just getting an MVP ready and then being able to look at funding beyond that is our next aim, and we're getting closer there now. So that's really exciting.
Yeah. Wicked. All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there. But thanks for sharing your stories and chatting. I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks. Cheers.
If you enjoyed that, you'll be pleased to know I've got loads more episodes planned with guests from the UK and more further afield. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and stay tuned for those episodes. Peace.